and welcome, friends of SlaterPod. Hello from Zurich.
Hi from London.
Great. So great packed agenda today. Again, we're going to talk about Google Snafu, a glitch by, the world's biggest internet company. Then we're going to talk about a super interesting acquisition by RWS. They bought our friends over at the iconic Translation Machines and another Indian LSP. And then we're going to talk about translator salaries, interpreter salaries. There's some new data out of the US. And there's a very recent development that I think just happened overnight, our time in California, around that AB5 legislation, they call the gig worker law. So a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today. And we are looking in great shape for SlaterCon Remote. Great uptake so far. So I'm really excited about that. It's interesting. It's a slightly different demographic. Or there's some people that obviously we know, and we've had a previous physical SlaterCons, but there's a lot of people that probably haven't had the chance to travel to San Francisco, Hong Kong, or London in the past, and now registering for the virtual version of the conference. So the agenda is all very, very good. I'm really pleased, and we're still like 1 month out. So it looks like that the webinar fatigue isn't too bad. We do have a great agenda. So I kick everything off with a brief update. Then I'm really looking forward to hearing from Stuart Green. We the CEO of Zoo Digital, the media localizer. So we had him in London in 2018, and really glad that he's back again. Have a game localization panel with Christina and Tamara, Christina Anselmi and Tamara Tiriak. Christina's from Electronic Arts, Tamara's from Frontier Development, moderated by Daniel Fink, a solutions architect and Game Lock Geek. I talked to him.
I'm sure he won't mind you calling him that.
No, he knows everything about this area. It's amazing. Like when he talked to him, and there's so much passion. It's really cool talking to him. Great guy. Then we have Piotr from Value for Capital. That's the PE firm that invested in Simulingua. He's going to talk about private equity investment. I think really interesting, especially in those times. I want to know from kind of a first-hand source around, how private equity is managing this. There's a lot of dynamics going on there with, financial markets crashing initially and now going through the roof, and how private equity, private capital is being managed and invested in this time.
And that was quite recent, wasn't it? Before coronavirus hit. I mean, I think they only closed the sort of deal with Simulingua in December 2019 or something. Or was it
that's
earlier?
Really recent. Yeah, really recent.
And now to hit this immediately, so it would be interesting discussion.
Yeah, indeed. And then Ed from Quill talking about transcreation, kind of at scale. Looking forward to that. A company I haven't had on the radar as much. I think they do a lot of also digital and content services that are kind of outside of the core log space. So I'm really looking forward to that. And we have the CEO of Chartered Institute of Linguists, based in London, Anne Carlisle, who's going to talk about the value of language skills. And then we're closing on with Balázs from EasyLing on website translation proxy, a technical presentation. And then we are in discussions with a couple of buyers, big language service buyers, for kind of a closing presentation. So yeah, I mean, just rattling through the program, really great. Go there, sign up, register, $25, probably the best value for money you're finding out there. So segueing into, value for money. It was free.
Value for money, yeah, but also not good value if all of your data gets leaked.
But yes, exactly. It was free, but then your data was shared. So kind of a crazy story. Like the more I'm thinking about it, the kind of crazier it gets for me. Like it was this kind of small tweet, and it was retweeted like 50 times. But if you think about it, it's kind of a big story. So walk us through what happened over at Google.
Yeah, so this is pertaining to Google Toolkit, which you might remember was retired by Google in late 2019. So that's their translation productivity, cloud-based translation productivity. It wasn't super popular with anybody in particular, translators, vendors, and clients, but there were people clearly who were using it. And as you said, yeah, it came out recently that Google basically told people that between a certain time period, some of the users' TMs, I guess, or data had been exported and inadvertently sent to another user. We don't know which other user. We also don't know how many accounts were impacted or anything. But
so
yeah,
just to back up for a second.
Yeah.
So basically, I think they retired the tool.
Yes.
And then they probably gave people, well, they did give people the opportunity to download all of their data, right? When you when you shut down an account, then you can download everything you have there, and then you can do with the data whatever you want. In this case, Google retired the tool, and so they told people, well, why don't you download all of your data?
Yes.
And then some of those, you typically get like an email with a link, and then you go and download. So some of these emails apparently went to
the wrong place.
Like to the wrong place, right?
It's probably like some kind of data entry issue somewhere along the line, like the wrong email account being linked to some, well, you know, the wrong email address being linked to some kind of account. But obviously that's just speculation.
It's Google.
Wait,
I mean,
yeah, I know, but you can't say that for everything. I mean, there's still some people, you know, inputting and doing some manual tasks. Obviously.
Yeah, but they got the email figured out. They kind of conquered the world. So
I guess they got email figured out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's quite a wide time frame. So they're saying that apparently anyone who downloaded or who accessed the download your data tool between the end of October in 2019 and the beginning of April 2020, so it's like 6 months or something. Apparently, I mean, not necessarily. It didn't necessarily go to somebody else. I mean, it said in the email, I think they said there's a small possibility that a portion of your Google Translator Toolkit data was impacted. We want to let you know. We sincerely apologize. We have fixed the issue. So they blamed it on a technical issue, as you would do. But
they also said they didn't know what went where, right?
What went where?
Like they didn't know
who received what. Well, they said they couldn't. Well, I don't know if it was that they didn't know or that they weren't able to disclose.
Well, you should. Right? I mean, if somebody sends my data somewhere, I probably want to know where it went so I can get in touch with the guy.
They must be able to, yeah, but they must be able to tell. They must have some record of things sent out of the system, unless that was the technical issue.
Yeah, I mean, one of the takes here is also that, I mean, this is another arrow in the quiver for sales guys that are pushing, like that are selling you know, enterprise grade machine translation and TMS and CAT tools. This is another example, right? We had some, like Microsoft, there was this translate.com issue like 2 years ago that had a Microsoft translator snafu, glitch, whatever, and now this.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is pretty good material for anybody selling these types of, you know, enterprise grade solutions. Can say, hey, you know, you really shouldn't go for free online tools.
Yeah, I guess it's a good sort of case in point, isn't it? It's easy to sort of say hypothetically, oh, but you know, you don't want Google to access your data or you don't want it to leak. And I suppose, you know, maybe 99% of the time it's fine, but when it goes wrong, you know, it does sort of highlight these security and confidentiality considerations that a lot of businesses will have.
Yeah, that said, I mean, I think also we spoke about it before the podcast. One of the points here is you probably shouldn't like upload. Well, not probably. You really shouldn't upload confidential client data to any free cloud-based tools in the first place, right? So, it's kind of a worst case scenario. You upload it and then they lose it, and you know it's just typically the argument around Google having your data. Like on a more superficial level is like that they're analyzing it and they're doing all kinds of, you know, stuff with it, and in this case they just flat out lost it or sent it to the wrong person. So that is something you really wouldn't expect.
But you've got no recourse either, I imagine. I mean, you can't really say, well, I want my money back or give me compensation.
No. I wonder how they found it out, because it's kind of late, right? Maybe somebody
told them. Yeah, that's what I would imagine. I mean, yeah, maybe someone who received the wrong TM or something like that actually said, hey, you know, some scrupulous people out there who are informing.
Yep. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, we reached out for comment and unfortunately we received no reply.
What a shame.
So this is actually, with this story, I was kind of 50-50. Sometimes on stories like that would actually, somebody would bother to contact you and give you a kind of a stock response or something. Because, you know, anyway, got a lot of traffic on our website, of course. A lot of people shared it. But anyway, that tool is now retired, and they got a lot of other stuff going on there, of course. So let's talk about an acquisition. This is after Plint, which was acquired by a private equity firm, the media localizer Plint. This is kind of the second coronavirus pandemic period acquisition, but this one is quite core to the translation industry, not even localization industry, the translation industry. So RWS, we keep calling it the world's most valuable language service provider, which they are. I mean, they're like,
it's a nice label to have.
Yeah, it's not the biggest by revenue, but they're most valuable. They're like $2+ billion valued on the stock market. So they acquired Iconic Translation Machines. That's a Dublin-based pure play machine translation player. But before we go into that, just a quick update on revenues and results, because they also confirmed revenues and results. I think we spoke about it briefly before when they gave a heads up. So generated 169.7 million pounds in revenue. That's a slight decrease. That's the overall RWS as a company. They, slight dip in profits, down 7% to 33.1 million. And then in terms of their three divisions, so Life Sciences and Moravia grew in like the single digits, and the IP Services unit dropped by 7%. For anybody who wants to dig into this, go head over to our Slater Pro article. And also, if you're really adventurous, you can read the actual filing, which is like 25 pages of details. So before Iconic as well, we speak about Iconic just another. They actually announced two acquisitions. The other one being Webdunia. That's an India-based LSP. And they do some other kind of content localization, etc. services. It's medium-sized LSP, $13.8 million in revenue and 600 employees. So that's a lot of employees for that revenue base. And RWS paid $21 million. So that's 6.7 times adjusted EBITDA, which is okay. I mean, it's. I would say probably pre-pandemic, would have been on the somewhat lower side of the spectrum, right? Typically, it's maybe more like 8 or 9 for something of that size. 6.7, not bad. Congratulations to the folks over at Webdunia. But let's talk about Iconic. So Iconic was quite a small company in terms of revenues. They generated apparently $1.2 million US in revenue in the whole of 2019, but that was up 100% from the year before. So they doubled revenue, right? In terms of, because I was seeing they were hiring a few more people. Like I could notice, like there's business appeared to be going
some growth,
good for them. And EBITDA was break even, so they basically made no profit, which is understandable, right? You ramp up and you keep hiring new people to grow the business. Now, they sold to RWS for up to $20 million. That's nice. That's 16 times revenue, and obviously infinite times your EBITDA. So that's a real kind of a tech valuation, right? I mean, for a language service provider, that's just that's an absolutely unheard of valuation. But they're not service; they're tech, right? So let's look a bit at who this company, who's behind this company. So it's John Tinsley. That's who everybody knows. And then I actually didn't know the other gentleman, the co-founder, was Parag Sheridan. I never heard of him, I must admit. But John Tinsley, actually, he was at our 2017 SlaterCon. He was actually the first person to tell me about Neural MT.
Okay.
I remember it was back in Lockworld, Dublin. I think it must have been 2016.
Right.
I was walking around. I'm like, I talked to him like, hey, did you hear about this thing called like neural machine translation? And then he was so kind. Like he took the time and explained or tried to explain, the vector system to me. And like, I had no idea.
Mind blown.
My mind was like, well, it obviously does something better than the other tools do or other systems do. What I did remember from that, which we spoke about last time, is that it's a black box. Like you kind of, you don't really know what's going on inside. And that's inside those models, how it actually, the translation gets, calculated. So that's what I remember. Anyway, very that was very kind of John to explain that to me. And obviously for him, it's been a great run since. So exiting. So they don't get all the money up front. They get about half, 10 million is what they call cash at completion. And then there's that typical kind of earnout period over 28 months. So they need to stick around for 2+ years, 2.5 years at RWS. And then, if they hit certain performance targets, they're going to get the other 10 million. So let's see if they'll...
It's a good incentive.
It's a good incentive. They get the other 10 million RWS shares, by the way, probably with some lockup period.
Okay.
Now, so each founder owned about 30% of the company. So, I'm sure they're heading out and had a good pub run over that deal. So there were a few other shareholders. The Dublin City University, which Iconic was a spin out from, they held 13%, and then there's some equity funds, Bloom Equity, Bull Investment Syndicate, and like Enterprise Ireland, which is probably some type of, government tech promotion thing. So we spoke about the valuation. So let's talk a bit about the rationale for why this deal happened. So RWS said they will form like a new division, or what did they call it?
New vertical language technology business.
That's right. Okay, so it basically they have these 3 divisions now, and they're going to do, it's not going to be attached to either Moravia or IP services or life sciences. It's going to be a standalone unit, apparently. And they also said, RWS, that the life sciences unit had been working closely with Iconic and rolling out NMT to RWS's pharma clients. And I noticed over the past 2 years that I saw Iconic going much more into kind of their content marketing was more targeted towards the life sciences space. So, who knows? Maybe they saw while they're working on this that, hey, this machine translation company is getting a lot of good traction with some of our core clients. And, we either need to develop this in-house, or we need to license it from them, or we're just going to buy the whole company, which is apparently what, which is obviously what ended up happening.
Yeah.
I mean, $20 million. I mean, there would have been also... You could also have argued that why don't you just build it yourself? I mean, there's all these, open source frameworks out there. You hire a core team of machine learning people and you build it yourself. So I'm sure there's also it has something to do with the existing client base that Iconic has developed over the past 4 to 5 years. Must have been pretty good. I think that might have moved the needle, because it can't just be the technology. I don't think they have a kind of a USP on the technology side. So now it's interesting because you got these super agencies, TransPerfect, they kind of acqui-hired Taoyo, then Lionbridge has Gengo and some internal, and now we have RWS with its own MT businesses. And then on the other, and they can deploy this across their vast client base. On the other hand, you have these kind of MT native startups like Lilt or Unbobble, who are hiring kind of more experienced enterprise salespeople. And so I'm trying to get in from that angle. So different
sort of sides to the same coin.
So it's, let's see where we are in 2 to 3 years, and which one's going to get more traction. I think the jury's out. I don't think anybody has this locked up. So great. Very different story is jobs and salaries of translators, interpreters in the US. Let's keep it light on the figures, but there will be a few figures. So
But fair warning, there will be some figures. Yeah.
There will be figures.
So this was the Occupational Outlook Handbook, it's called. And this is something that comes out of the US Bureau of Labor Statistics once a year. So we've covered, I think over a few years now, some of the statistics around translator and interpreter salaries, along with some data around, where translators and interpreters are hired, who pays the best, and things like that. So what came out this year, and again, this is median pay, so not mean, average, median, calculated slightly differently.
What's median? Let's be clear.
Median is the 50%.
50% is below and 50% is above, right? So it's not the average. So you're taking out some of these outliers. So if there's like one person that earned like $1 million, then that wouldn't actually really count. Okay.
Yeah. Good. Thank you for the for
No,
the definition.
I get it confused, and it's I think it's important that it's the median.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it can be quite significantly different, obviously, as you say, if there are outliers. So, the median pay there was $51,830 annually. So nearly 52,000 annually is the median pay for employed translators and interpreters, and that equates to around just under $25 per hour.
And then that's up. That's up.
That
from
is
last.
up.
Yeah.
From So actually, we should probably just say this was 2019 data. So up nearly 4% from 2018. So this was like a snapshot in May 2019. What is the annual salary of translators and interpreters? So there we go, up 4%. Obviously, not too sure what's going to happen with that kind of moving forward now that we've got the coronavirus pandemic on our hands. And then, we also had some data there from different states, including which states paid the best. So the top paying state was Virginia, with more than $75,000 annually, followed by New York and New Jersey, both also above $70,000 a year. And then sector-wise, so the top paying sector for translators and interpreters was this year professional, scientific and technical services, which obviously is a very broad bucket. But that sector paid on a median of $57,450 annually. But it was closely followed by government work, which was only sort of less than $100 less per year. And the state with the highest level of employment in 2019 for translators and interpreters was California, according to this data.
Huh? Okay.
Just over 8,000, and paying an average of 61,000, just over 61,000.
And those are employed.
Those are employed, So this was the survey. It's based on survey data coming out of the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and they focus on employed translators and interpreters, and indeed across other professions as well for that different data categories. Yeah, so it also includes, Sorry, I was going to say it also includes sign language interpreters, which obviously we don't typically sort of include in our coverage, but they've taken that into account as well.
Okay.
What were you going to say?
No. So in terms of, we also looked at some other countries, right? Maybe let's not go too much into detail here, but in Italy, it says the average translation income was 29,000 euros. Do we know average translation income? Does that include freelancer as well, or?
I think it was a survey data that came out of including freelance translators. So that's not sort of a governmental survey. It would be an industry survey, and again that was for a couple of years ago. Typically, I mean, we don't see a lot around kind of income levels. I think because a lot of the profession is freelance or works maybe part-time, or not necessarily only in this sector, but we have also kind of covered some surveys around, per word rates or per hour rates. That data tends to be a bit more readily available from some of the associations. I suppose that's what they're kind of concerned with maintaining.
Yeah, I mean, we have some figures here in the show notes, but let's go through. Let's pass this, but go to job ad data. We did do on a particular project. We did look at some job ad data. What can you share there?
Yeah, and this was looking at a series of job ads back in, I think, November or December 2019. Typically, obviously, people are not really disclosing salary figures for within their job adverts, but we did find some. So in the UK, we saw a German linguist role advertised for an in-house position with an LSP, a large LSP, which was paying between £25,000 and £28,000. So around $33,000 to $37,000. I mean, the overall story is that it's very varied and it's totally mixed. So I guess on the other sort of end of the spectrum, you have a role in Geneva, Switzerland, that was looking for a Russian to English translator with the World Intellectual Property Organization, and that was paying over $100,000. Yeah,
that is something I'm seeing here as well, because if they hire you as, or you're hired as a translator, for example, it's now here in this particular role, but you're put in a particular bracket. Like it's I mean, if you're working for a vendor, it's like hyper competitive market rates, they're trying to squeeze out the last little thing. But if you're for the WIPO or like another large organization, you're fitting into another kind of category. And frankly, I mean, I guess if you work for the WIPO, you need to be an extremely highly qualified specialist. So
and then, that's obviously a very experienced hire rather than 25 to 28, probably not so much.
And if you live in Geneva, you just kind of need a little bit of money. I
mean, whereas London is completely cheap.
Yeah, you're right. But you're right. But that's why a lot of people live in France, and then they just kind of cross the border. But okay, you're right. Okay, touché.
No, I'm not arguing. I'm just saying 25 to 28,000 pounds in London is a starting salary.
That is starting.
It's not high. It's not experienced hire.
Yeah, that doesn't.
At least I hope.
That doesn't get you an apartment in EC something. Maybe
it
more.
It does not.
Somewhere north. Yeah. So when I'm thinking about these types of salary, also a lot of people would want to discuss, how does MT impact these types of pay levels? And actually, I think it may, or it doesn't really impact it, because there's one thing, and I kind of want to end on this briefly on this topic, but think about it. If the engine gets really, really good, right, and it's really specialized, uses mostly the right terminology, for you to actually find issues with a translation, find errors, and edit it properly, you need to be even better, as you need to be more qualified with more expertise as MT progresses. Because if you don't have the expertise and you don't have the background, well, guess what? You're not going to be able to find anything anymore in a highly trained and targeted MT output, right? So I would argue that as MT gets better, the professionals that need to edit, or that are editing and post editing, need to be even more qualified as a result of it, and that means they will have the same or even a higher take-home pay. Because if you're a highly qualified financial professional, bilingual, well, you're not going to work for a bad salary. So that's my take. On the other end of the spectrum, or in a not other end of the spectrum, but in a different world, not the employed, but the freelancers. There's just been a kind of a breaking news update from California. We spoke about this AB5 amendment, the gig worker law, where basically they want to reclassify freelancers as employed, and it just kind of really would just completely disrupt, or it will disrupt the way the language industry has operated in California. And there's been a lot of efforts going into exempting certain categories, and apparently there was an effort for Assembly Bill 1850, it's called, and it was passed by it was
70 to 0 votes.
It was 70 to 0.
Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yes. But it's in the, I'm blanking on the type, it's whatever, the Congress or House of Representatives in California. So now it's moving into the Senate. I'm not sure it's actually passed, but it's passed. And if it enters into force, the kicker here is that they did exempt, quote unquote, certified translators, but they did not exempt translators, or particularly interpreters. So interpreters are still subject to this really bad law, while so-called certified translators are now exempt. So I wonder if now everybody will become a certified translator, whatever that means. I need to look that up. Yeah, that's a whole other discussion. Well, maybe we can dive into this a bit more in next week.
I think so. It'd be good to understand what stage it's at, and the impacts on obviously translators and interpreters at large.
Yeah, I mean, it is a local issue, but California is so big, and we have so many
Well, I
readers
mean, and
and,
also, as
and
we
listeners
said,
there.
when I was talking about those original stats, it's the state with the highest employment of translators and interpreters.
There you go.
Oh, that's employment though, so that's not freelance. But again, it suggests that there are a lot of freelance translators and interpreters there.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's wrap up for today. Thanks everybody for taking the time to listen in, and catch you next week. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.